Hello, my name is Thomas Schwingle, and I am a professional cinematographer based in Los Angeles. I'm making this 6-part series of videos for freelance filmmakers, creative gig workers, and small film businesses, figuring out the nuances of contract work versus being a short-term employee is confusing. Taxes are complicated. Invoicing and dealing with contracts from a studio can be intimidating. This is not legal advice or professional tax advice. Please speak with a lawyer if you need specific consultation, and please do your own due diligence. My opinions and tips are not the only way to structure your plans. However, after many years of running my cinematography trade across multiple states, I've learned a lot and often get asked by others for input. I'm sharing what I know because I haven't seen a lot of other videos that do it. This is video 6 of 6 in this series. The previous video looked at taxes. Something that is extremely important for independent contractors is saving. Saving for retirement is necessary. Unless you are staffed somewhere, it is very unlikely that you, as someone working in a creative field, have an employer-provided option to save for retirement. Even when we do time card jobs, where we are an employee for a day or handful of days, we are unlikely to be actively putting a portion of our income away for retirement. Some of the film unions have access to pensions or retirement plans, but if it takes you many years to move up to that level, you are missing out on some early saving opportunities. As an independent contractor or small business, you almost certainly have no access to a retirement fund unless you initiated it. Self-employment taxes and taxes paid out of your payroll jobs do go into your Social Security account held with the federal government. However, it is often cited that the future payments from this organization are likely to be far less than what may be required or desired when you retire. Currently, at the time of this video, an average Social Security check for a retired worker is somewhere between $1,800 and $1,900 a month. That is what an average retired person lives off of if they worked most to all of their qualifying years and then started taking distributions when they decided they were done working. $1,900 a month can go pretty quickly if you have a lot of monthly expenses and no other money saved. That's a yearly allowance of $22,800. The administration adjusts for inflation and cost of living increases, so it will likely be a higher average payout when it's time for you to retire, but it may still be a number that feels low. What else can you do? You've probably heard people talk about IRAs, 401ks, pensions. These are all ways that a person can save for retirement. They go above and beyond what your payroll taxes may cover through Social Security. There are many paths one can take to set up some sort of retirement savings, depending on how you structure your business. But the most important thing is to do it, and do it as early as possible. I understand that when you're in your 20s, it may feel silly to take 10 to 20% or more of your income and put it away for 50 years from now. Like, you're just starting to make some serious cash. You want to keep it. You can afford the good food now. I didn't really fathom the idea either, but let me show you why starting early is great. Compound interest. It's a term that gets used in banking, but what does it mean? Let's tell a story of two young women, Eve and Lana. Think of Eve as synonymous with early, and Lana as meaning later. Eve starts her own retirement account at 21 years old. Every year until she is 30, she contributes $2,400 into her retirement account. $2,400. It's not too much money for a year, right? That's $200 a month of your income. It's likely less than what you might spend on groceries each month. She does this up until 30 years old and then stops. No more contributions. She decides to do other stuff and kind of forgets about her IRA account. Lana starts at 30 years old, and for 37 years, until she is 67, so like the whole time that she and Eve are living their adult lives after 30 years old, she puts in the same $2,400 a year that Eve was doing in her 20s before Eve stopped. $200 a month. It's like grocery money or a couple nights out on the town. If we do the math, that means that in her 20s, Eve put in a total of $21,600 and stopped contributing at 30 years old. Lana put in $88,000 from 30 years old to 67 years old. Lana put in about $67,000 more of her lifetime income than Eve. Who ended up with more money? We are going to base it on both of them picking identical retirement portfolios, which had a pretty basic assortment of stocks and bonds. They were very bland, simple portfolios for set-it and forget-it investors, a 7.5% average return across the years. A side note here, a lot of financial folks, when they do their version of an Eve-Lana retirement comparison story, use a high rate of return of 10% or more. While this can be achieved, I kind of wanted to give us something a little more grounded. So if I set up this drastic scenario, you can assume there is a surprise. Eve, who only contributed in her 20s but started as soon as she could, ends up with over $500,000 for retirement. Lana, who finally got around to a retirement account in her 30s after becoming more established and starting to think about all this adult stuff, continued to invest for 37 years until retirement, and she ended up at $500,000 or so. They're only about $50,000 apart in their accounts at retirement time, with Eve still outperforming Lana, even though Lana put in 4 times as much money over her entire working life. Back to our little side story, when financial advisors use this comparison, they can have all of the same inputs and ages for Lana and Eve. Here you see an example with Ben and Joey, but if they go with an average of an 11% return, which is around the average for the S&P 500 index of the market across the years, the difference gets even crazier. Eve, or Ben in this chart, ends up with almost $1 million more. Compounding interest is the bottom line. Get in early. As you can see in both charts, the point is that when you let money sit in a compounding environment, it can really start to take off, go vertical, especially at higher return rates. So while you are young and kind of thinking that retirement is far away and not important, you should think differently. Get investing as soon as possible. The effects of compound interest are going to make you richer in the long run. I started in my mid-20s, and I still wish I would have started even sooner. I just didn't know. It wasn't taught to me. And having $1 million at retirement sounds like a lot, but that pile of savings is supposed to last you through old age. If you expect to have access to a lot of cash, like $100,000 a year for travel, expenses, fun experiences, and I don't know, golf, is that what retirees do? That is only about 10 years worth of distributions at basic face value before you run out. If you want to live that golf lifestyle as soon as possible, you got to start putting more money away sooner. So, how do you start? The 2 most accessible and often suggested options are a form of an individual retirement account. You usually hear it abbreviated as an IRA. There are Roth IRAs and traditional IRAs. They both function as vehicles to invest your savings for retirement. The main difference is when you are taxed. Yes, more tax talk. With a traditional IRA, any money you put into it can be a deduction from your yearly tax return. But if you have access to a different retirement plan, like through an employer or spouse, then this deduction can change. There are always rules on rules. But generally, with an IRA, you put money in, and that contribution can lower your yearly tax liability, something we discussed in the last video. When you ultimately take distributions out in retirement, you pay taxes on this retirement income because you didn't pay taxes when you put it in. You used it as a write-off. With a Roth IRA, you get no such deduction when you contribute. You're putting money in after paying income tax on it. You don't get any help with your taxes right now. However, when you retire and satisfy the requirements set forth by the IRA, you can take your retirement distributions from the Roth IRA without paying taxes on it. It's pretty much straight cash to you at retirement time. So is one or the other better? Typically, for an artist or someone whose income is variable, Roth IRAs get recommended. You're not getting the tax deduction when you contribute, but you're unlikely to be in a high tax bracket early in your career, i.e., you're not rich and looking for any way possible to lower your yearly tax bill. You can have both. There are limits to how much you can contribute each year, and having both types factors into this. But if you find that you are someone that needs more vehicles for tax write-offs, like you're making some good money and you're getting hit with a lot of income tax, then a traditional IRA can help offset your taxes. If you get to a point in your career where you are making significant money, like something above $150,000 a year, then things start to change. There are income limits for IRAs, and if you make too much, you're not allowed to contribute, which is annoying. You're making great money and want to save it, but these IRA vehicles can have their doors closed to contributions if you're doing too well. In that case, you may end up looking at a solo 401k plan, also known by variants such as a self-employed 401k or one participant 401k. It's more complicated to set up and requires some structures in place for your business, like having the employer identification number we discussed back in video number 2. But if you're making too much money to reliably use IRAs, then we need to think bigger. Ultimately, you must research what is best for your career path. But it's not too hard to set up a retirement account. No longer do you have to walk into a place and talk to someone. There are dozens of places that will let you set up an account through an online portal. Some are more reputable than others. And if you've been paying attention to financial news, you've heard of banks, crypto exchanges, and other niche finance firms failing or collapsing. A lot of folks get roped into promos like free cash bonus when you join us or free crypto tokens with a new account. But depending on the stability, size, and general history of the institution, there's always a chance of everything getting lost in a bad economic market. I would highly advise using one of the older traditional names. Perhaps not as flashy as some of the new companies, and they may have limited access to new investing strategies like cryptocurrency, but a classic company is unlikely to fail and lose all of your hard-earned retirement money. 3 common places I would suggest are Fidelity, Charles Schwab, and Vanguard. I've managed accounts at 2 of these 3, and it's a painless process. Some places have a minimum opening investment. When I started my Roth IRA at a firm that I am no longer with for a few reasons, and no, it's not one of the 3 preferred names I just gave you, I had to start with a $5,000 deposit just to open the IRA, one of the many reasons I'm no longer with that company. Do a little digging before you commit. Once your money is in the IRA, is it invested? No, it's kind of like a bank account first. The money goes in, and once it's in, it's ready to spend on investment products. There are literally thousands upon thousands of securities and funds that your money can be invested in. Individual stocks for companies like Google, Coca-Cola, Costco, mutual funds with different goals, baskets of stocks that follow some trend, bonds that are generally more stable, etc. Your savings have to be deposited and then allocated to some of these investment options in order to grow over time and capture that compound interest. There are a few ways that you can manage your retirement account and pick where your savings should be held. You can elect to have a managed fund by a real person, but you'll lose a certain small percentage of your contributions to the manager as a fee. In theory, they're supposed to help your money grow in the way that you desire, and they make trades and adjustments on your behalf. However, statistically, account managers rarely outperform the market or get a client better earnings than basic benchmarks. If you want to have no part in picking stocks, mutual funds, bonds, or ETFs, which are baskets of stocks, but also don't want the fees associated with a person managing your account, then you should find an affordable place to set up your account that has robo-advisors, which is essentially an algorithm that will automatically balance your retirement funds and pick the funds for you based on age, income, retirement timeline, etc. This is a good middle-of-the-road option. It's cheaper to have an algorithm do it for you, and they're generally reliable, and the fees will be lower than a human manager. You can manage your own allocations in your retirement account, but I don't recommend it. It's not for anyone who hasn't spent at least a few years researching the stock market and experiencing its ups and downs. A person can quickly and foolishly lose a lot of money if they don't know what they're doing. Just go over to Wall Street Bets and see examples of people losing thousands of dollars overnight all the time. I now manage my own Roth IRA, but that is because I dedicated a number of years to learning the stock market and doing research on retirement. For a long time, I had been disappointed with the performance of my Roth IRA that I had first opened. And after taking a few years to teach myself about the market, I moved the account over to my control and to one of the 3 preferred brokerages that I mentioned earlier. And those are the basics of saving for retirement. But in addition to thinking of all the money you could be making off of compound interest, especially if you start as soon as possible, you should consider a few other intermediate goals. First and foremost, pay off any debts that are weighing on you. Credit card debt is the worst. It can easily have interest that is 20% or higher. And a card that is charging you 25% interest on balances that you are carrying, this is usually compounded interest, by the way. This is affecting you more right now than the benefits of a 7-ish% interest compounding in your retirement account. You should also consider any other debts you are carrying that have high interest, like above 5% or so. Student loans and car payments, for example. And yes, while this interest isn't typically compounded, you're still paying an extra cost on these loans. Finally, considering how unpredictable a creative career is, you should try to have some liquid savings set aside. 3 to 6 months of cash in a savings account or somewhere where you can access it in a scenario where your day-to-day funds start running low. I know this isn't always possible, but it should be a goal for yourself. It's a juggle to manage all of this, paying down debts, saving for retirement, and stashing away rainy day funds, but hopefully you are doing all 3. Our careers are unpredictable and ever evolving, and we have to watch out for ourselves. This concludes this 6-part series on being a creative, filmmaker, small business, and/or independent contractor in the world of short-term projects. While I didn't give you a roadmap for every possible scenario you will find while working in this industry, I hope I armed you with some basic tools to keep yourself protected and give you an edge on all the non-creative stuff we often have to deal with. Go make art, have fun, impress us with creativity. But be responsible, conscientious of others, and let's all try to elevate each other and our crafts so that they continue to be appreciated, funded, and respected. If you liked this series, please hit those like buttons. Run through the series and hit the like button on all of them. It can help get this in front of others who might need the advice. Subscribe if you like. Next up will likely be some advanced technical tests and explanations within the world of cinematography. Thank you for watching.